Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study. And we're going to be continuing to look at the story of David and Goliath. Well, actually, we've moved on to chapter 18, dealing with Jonathan and Saul's jealousy. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. The dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the time that we have this morning to open your word. And we're thankful for the discussions that we can have and the friendships that we have developed with one another. I pray, Lord, that you can give us all wisdom and understanding, especially as we look at the events happening around us in this world. We know that the Bible, your word, is the thing that guides and directs our actions and our understanding of what is happening. And so we pray, Lord, that as we study and we learn about ourselves and about you, that we can understand our place in the world and our responsibilities. So be with us now, we ask, through thy Spirit. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so now we had a little bit of discussion prior to the study. So we're starting like 15 minutes late. But when we look at the world, what's happening in this world, so I'm going to talk about something. Probably everybody knows what agency is, right? When we talk about agency, does anybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about agency?
Depends on the definition, but agency can mean one that stands in place of another. They are the agent.
Okay, well, yes. So when we look at the world around us, you have people who are naturalists, or right, that is, they believe in naturalism, that there is no such thing as any agency other than human agency. And even lots of them deny human agency. That is, we're basically don't have free will. So agency has to do with action, right? And we believe in divine agency. That is, God is overseeing everything. He has his purposes, his will, right? And we all recognize in our personal lives God's agency. That is, God has worked. He has come into our lives personally, and we have seen his hand, right? All of us can
Okay.
attest to that, right? So it's a
Correct.
conversation Zachary and I were having this morning, and just thinking about it in the context of Bible prophecy. So one of the things when we look at this chart here and we look at these events that have unfolded in our history that we are a part of, we can see God's hand, right? As his agency. That is, God's purposes are being unfolded to us as individuals and as a group, um, in a meaningful way. And this is one of the things that helps us in our personal walk with God. We can see that, Jesus says, I've told you things before they come to pass, that when they come to pass, you may believe that I am he. Right? So these events that we see in front of us are meant to be understood. I mean, we have some dates sometimes in the future. We don't know what they mean. We're not predicting events, but we see that they're part of a purpose or a plan. And when we think about what this movement has been involved in, so the movement was not involved initially in predicting when things were going to happen in the future. We're Seventh Day Adventists. We understand that there's going to be a Sunday law, that the governments of this world are going to persecute God's people, and that the papal Sabbath, Sunday, is going to be the test for the people of God. The Sabbath really being the test. Are we going to be true to God's Sabbath, the seventh day, or are we going to follow the dictates of Catholicism as worked out by the governments of the world, enforced by the governments of the world? So we know that as Seventh day Adventists. But this movement, back prior to 9/11, so if we go back 1989. Jeff is going to um, start to understand about the repeat of Millerite history. So the events that happen in Millerite history, the time of the end when the Pope is taken captive, Pope Pius VI, on February 15th, 1798, marks the time of the end. And we have these prophecies about the soon coming of Christ. The first angel's message, I guess, primarily is what the Millerites presented, not really considering the significance of the second or the third angel's message of Revelation 14, or even the message of Revelation 18, right? So Millerite history is focused on the first angel's message. Early Adventist history recognizes the second and the third angel's message, with the proclamation of Revelation 18 as being connected to the Sunday law. And so we're in the time of the proclamation of the angel of Revelation 18. So then this movement after 9/11 enters a new era. That is the arrival of that angel of Revelation 18. The second angel is repeated in our history. That occurs at 9/11. On the chart there, it says the second angel arrives. With 1989 being a repeat of the first angel's message. And Jeff proclaims that message, and then we have 9/11. And then this movement, as you know, we can say we're the children of 9/11, so to speak. We start to have an unfolding of light in connection with Islam. We recognize that what happened at 9/11 was the restraint of Islam in connection with the third woe, and then we have this explosion of understanding of prophecy that really begins to intensify after 2012, or after, in 2013. The understanding of Ezra 7:9 in the spring of 2013, it starts to be looked at. August 31st, 2013, I figure out the first day of the first month and the first day of the fifth month. I think for the first time, that's when this movement really understands it. Well, it's not till the next year that the movement understands it. And this gives us all these symbolic dates. We start to look at the first day of the first month, the first day of the fifth month in the Bible. We understand that these symbols show up again and again in different ways. We get, of course, midnight and the midnight cry symbols, July 21st, the fifth day of the fourth month. It connects us to Ezekiel. So there's an explosion of understanding. And then we're going to have this understanding of Daniel, right? Daniel 11. So we predict, even prior to the time that Trump proclaims his nomination in 2015, there is, in this movement, people who start to predict that Donald Trump's going to be the next president of the United States. Now, it takes time for the movement to sort of accept that. And even Jeff didn't fully, and I know I didn't fully, I didn't want to predict like that Trump's going to be president, but many people in the movement said, yeah, he would be. What's that?
I called it. Yeah.
Back in 2016?
Like social worker and I were talking, and she's like, "Nah, Hillary's gonna win." And I'm like, "Nah.
Over Hillary?
Yeah. Is this the right election? Yeah.
Yeah, but see, we don't predict things, right? In that sense. But once we had predicted that Trump was going to be president, and he did become president, it sort of emboldened the movement as far as their ability to make predictions. And then we know that time setting came into the movement in 2018, on June 9th, 2018. Something that, I've been opposed to my whole Christian experience, and Jeff had been. But when we had this time setting, there was two different types of time setting that were going on. So there was the type of time setting where we could figure out external events, and people saying, well, we should be able to predict when the Sunday law is going to be, when the close of probation is going to be, when the second coming is going to be. People were saying this within the movement. And my view was that, well, Ellen White's counsel against time setting still stands. You can't set that aside. So if there's time in the movement, it must be for a reason. Now, this all goes back to God working and operating in the way that he has in this movement. That is, God is speaking to us through these events, right? So we have here, this is this line of 1 Samuel chapter 17, dealing with David and Goliath, which, we've sort of finished this line at this point. As far as the dates, we haven't marked like time of the end, first angel arrives, first angel is formalized, first angel empowered, second angel arrives, second angel is formalized, second angel empowered, and then the third angel arrives. We haven't done that, right? Though I think we're going to have to at some point recognize what this line is as far as Millerite history, and we could probably kind of guess how that line works. Well, let's look at it this way. Here, we're going to do this right now. So before we go back into these other things. So if we look at this line, what is the period of darkness? What is the darkness in this line? And where would the first angel arrive?
On the chart that's before us right now, we don't have the first angel.
Yeah, so we would have to figure out where the darkness is, what this line is about, and where the first angel arriving would be.
Right.
And I'm just going to go back and look. I'm just stealing some stuff from other lines here. Yeah, I want to take these things here. Oops. I'm going to grab these things just so I don't have to write them out again. Okay. I think I copied them properly. No, I didn't. Okay, let's try to do that again. It's running a bit slow. Yeah, so well, there has to be something about this line that is darkness, right? Here, I'll grab these ones. Right? Otherwise, we don't really have a line. Why is it not pasting? Thought I copied it. Said I copied it. Let's try this again.
Your copy command was still grayed out.
Okay, well, why would that be? Okay, there we go. I guess I just didn't click on it correctly. This time it should work. No, it's not. I have no idea why it's not copying properly. It says it was copying, right? Okay, so anyway, let's just talk while I'm doing this so you guys can talk about what would the period of darkness be in connection with what our line is talking about? Just back around. Should have kept it. Yeah, I like these red ones. I'm going to grab these. Maybe there's something wrong with those. It says copy.
No, it's still grayed out.
How's it grayed out?
As I'm watching you make this.
That's gray?
That's gray. See, your paste options are good, but you're not getting it.
It looks the opposite to me. It looks like the paste options.
Okay, then I am wrong.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it's not copying these. See, if I click there, it just maybe. How else can I copy? I can go with my keyboard.
Control C.
What? Alt.
Control. What?
Control.
No, it's Control C. Just Control C.
Control C.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
No, it's not copying.
Well, yeah, it's strange. That's how I'd copy stuff with the keyboard without clicking with a mouse.
Yeah, this you know, because it's selecting them, right? You can see it's selected.
Yeah. So what's the objective here?
I just want to copy these so I can put them on my other diagram.
You might have to type them in individually.
Yeah, I'll just have to do
I
it
mean,
this
it's
way.
like 3 letters times like 5, right? It's not a big deal, right? So,
Yeah, I know. Okay, so okay, well, let's talk about this line first. So we have here a line. Now we're saying that we're zoomed into some date, and that this line is an expansion of that date. And the date that I would say usually that we zoom into is the arrival of the second angel, right? Not always, but in this case, I would say that November 9th is what this is about. This whole conflict is about November 9th, right? So November 9th would be the arrival of the second angel. We have an arrival of the first angel then that has to precede it with its formalization and its empowerment. Now, if I was to take, for instance, December 21st, 2012, as the arrival of the first angel, that would be the time of the end. So there would be a period of darkness that preceded December 21st, 2012. So what's that period of darkness that precedes it? Well, December 21st, 2012 is this prophecy that's totally bogus, that the Mayan calendar ended on that date. Now, what ended up happening is the 12th Baktun, however you want to call it. You know, the date before that was 12, 19, 19, 17, 19, right? That was the day before December. So on the Mayan calendar, each of those digits represents a counting system, right? So the one to the 0 to the far right can go up to 19. Once it goes up to 19, it moves to 1 in the one to the left of it, right? So if you had 130010, that would be 20 days after December 21st, 2012, right? And that one, the second digit from the right, it only goes up to 17, because once it goes to 18, then it's 18 times 20. Each one of those represents 20, right? And that means if you had 130100, that would be 360 days. That is 20 times 18 after December 21st, 2012. So hopefully people understand how that works. You can always look on the internet and find out how the Mayan count works. But the thing is, the Mayan calendar, that Baktuns, they go all the way up to 19, right? So obviously 13 isn't the end of the Mayan calendar. So the prediction that the Mayan calendar ended on that date was wrong. But it does move to the number 13, right? Now, in this line, if we're understanding what this line is about, this line is addressing time setting. Okay, so that means something about time setting. We're in a period of darkness prior to December 21st, 2012. So we'd have to figure out what that darkness is. Now we're going to have January 14th, 2017 is going to be when Jeff talks about the pandemic. So he's going to predict that there's going to be a pandemic, he says, between midnight and the midnight cry. Now, in that line that he's talking about, it's obviously a different line than this line. So we wouldn't say, because we're gonna later have November 9th labeled as midnight and July 18th labeled as the midnight cry. But that's not in this line, if that makes sense. That's in another line. Whatever that line is, it's not this line particular. So he makes a prediction. Now normally, there's more to that prediction, because he's going to talk about Raphi and Panium. Raphi is later going to be a label we attach to November 9th, Panium to July 18th. But after they pass, we generally just don't do that anymore, right? but we can recognize that within Jeff's prediction, November 9th and July 18th, that's where the pandemic's going to occur between, right? So it's going to occur in that history. So he made a correct prediction. Now that's a formalization of the message. So there is something about, if we're just using this line as it is and saying that, well, the time of the end is December 21st, 2012. It's the end of a time prophecy. Now, of course, that time prophecy is not a biblical time prophecy. It's we would call it a new age time prophecy, maybe. It's not something that we would normally consider. None of us considered, oh, the world's going to come to an end on December 21st, 2012, because, the Mayan calendar is going to move to a new back tune, right? So obviously none of us thought that. But yet we're going to say that that's the end of a time prophecy. So there was something about this line, and there was a line of failed predictions, which we have on this line. We have November 9th and July 18th, which are both failed predictions. We don't have on here September 23rd, 2017, though that would be a line of on the line of failed predictions as well. So this isn't just about the line of failed predictions. There's another line in which we could do that. This line is something about what's happening within the movement as far as a prediction. Now, Heidi and I are going to be banished from the School of the Prophets on January 21st, 2019. And if we're just going to take this line as it is, and we're saying the formalization is January 14th, 2017, then would January 21st, 2019 be an empowerment of that message? And if that was the case, how could us being banished from the School of the Prophets be an empowerment? That means we would have to understand what that message is and what the pandemic prediction, how it's a formalization of that message, right? You understand what I'm asking? So we're going to look at this as a line, and we're going to try to make sense out of it. So we haven't really defined what the period of darkness is yet, but we're looking at these events and we're saying whatever happened on January 14th, 2017 must be a formalization of a message that arrived December 21st, 2012. And the January 21st, 2019 must be the empowerment of that message, right? And then November 9th, 2019 would be the arrival of the second angel, with July 18 being a formalization of that message, and March 27th being, and that's what we have here, whether we're going to take March 27th or not as the empowerment of that message, or December 25th, 2021, because we've got kind of two dates there. We could also argue that that's an empowerment, and the December 25th, 2021 is the arrival of the third angel, with February 20th being the arrival of the fourth angel. So that's the repeat of the second angel. And the alas, alas from Amos 5:16 would suggest that. So we'd have July 18th being the formalization, March 27th being the empowerment, and December 25th being the arrival of the third angel. And then February 20th, 2025 being the arrival of the fourth angel, which is the second angel repeating. So, and we have the 4,444 days that would suggest that that's the fourth angel, right? We have 4 4s, right? But in order for that line to make sense, we would have to understand what the period of darkness is and what these particular dates, what information they're giving us regarding that darkness, because they're all an increase of light, even though we often talk about an increase of light after the arrival of the first angel. The whole line is always a period of darkness, and each waymark has attached to it an increase of light, because each waymark itself is also a reform line. Does that make sense? Have I sort of framed the problem in a way that makes sense to people, or is there still questions? So what we'd have to figure out is what we have learned in this line, what these different events have shown us, and what the period of darkness was prior to. So we have what is the darkness, what is the light. And also we have different groups being tested. Now, we know that this is in connection with the Philistines, right? So this isn't just a bunch of dates, that we have a story behind these dates that we've connected to. So Galaxy Note 9 says that should work. Okay, so what is the darkness? We know that it is something to do with Parminder's movement, right? Being the Philistines. Something to do with how we understand God's word. That there is a series of events that are marked here as dates that have things attached to them. So, for instance, if we look at 21/12/12, right, the 21st of December 2012, we can say, well, okay, we have a failed Mayan calendar prediction. We have a date that arrives. The symbol is the 13, which is a symbol of rebellion. Now we know in 2012, Parminder is going to make a prediction regarding what's going to happen in 2014. Now he's going to make that prediction not at the end of 2012. It's going to be in February or March or something like that. I think it's in March. That he makes this prediction that there's going to be a Sunday law in 2014. Okay. But the question is, there's going to be a message that arrives that's going to counter that, right? So if it's Parminder's time setting that's the darkness, what does 2012, how does that address that darkness? Why would we put the first angel arriving there? Because we have the date there, but let's have some discussion regarding that. How does this failed Mayan prediction, how does this have anything to do with Parminder's time setting? Okay, so I laid out the dots. So can you guys connect them and so we can see the picture? Nobody wants to do anything? I can't
Can you repeat the question again?
Okay. I've connected all of these dots, right? We've laid out this line. I'm saying in December 21st, 2012, what is there in connection with Parminder's time setting that December 21st, 2012 speaks to? How does that address a first angel arriving? Okay. Okay, it should alert us to the issues and points to come. Okay, let's see what happens here. I had to close that program. Maybe I can copy things now. Okay. Okay, so a time setting a false prediction regarding time is alerting us to the issues about time setting. Is that what you're saying there? I think that's who's ever on Galaxy Note 9. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Yeah. So the fact that we had a failed prediction should tell us something about time setting, that's the issue that's being addressed. Okay. Now, of course, we have a number of things about that. So the 13th Baktun, a Baktun is 144,000 days, right? So if we count 13 times 144,000, we get 1,872,000. We have the digits of July 18, 2020 as a symbol. So that means that date itself is going to speak to July 18th, 2020, a date at that time we don't have. Now, I'm giving a study on the 2520 on that date, right? So it's a Friday night. That's the time I meet Heidi. She comes to a Bible study on that date. And it becomes significant in my personal life, right? So obviously meeting Heidi on that date became significant. I end up recognizing that date as being connected to the Mayan calendar because I met Heidi on that day. So, it's kind of a long story of how all these calendar things happen. But we're going to have this next date, January 14th, 2017, when Jeff is going to make this pandemic prediction. And we noted that if we took that the children of Israel, Saul's army is in the valley of Elah, and we took the Hebrew number H425 and we put it in there as 130425, that we get that date. And so this gave us a formalization of this message. Now, Jeff is making a prediction, right? Now, he hasn't really attached time to it, but he has, right? In a sort of an indirect way. Because once we know that we are at midnight, and we're going to figure out when midnight's going to be, then we have the prediction set in time. But initially, doesn't have time attached to it. And then we have the bear, right? So that's H738, and that brought us to the center date of this structural line. That is 2,222 days after I met Heidi. Heidi and I are banished from the school of the prophets. Now, we're banished for what reason? What's the main reason we're banished? They have other ulterior reasons, but the main reason is...
Wasn't it about July 18th?
Okay. Well, it wasn't really about July 18th. It's about November 22nd, 2018. So even though it is kind of about July 18th in the sense that more indirectly, but more directly, their reason is that I had made a false prediction regarding what was going to happen on Thanksgiving in 2018, which is a complete misrepresentation of what happened in 2018. They're going to frame it in such a way, and they present that to Dwight in that way, that I made a false prediction. Right, Dwight? Dwight's there. Okay. So the banishment from the school of the prophets, obviously we could create a whole line dealing with that. But the fact that it's the center of this structure, which is created by all these different symbols in 1 Samuel 17, I think is significant. So we could say that is an empowerment of whatever that message was. Has to do with the fact that I am suggesting that we can't predict future events. Now, to say that January 21st, 2019 is an empowerment of it, obviously it would be connected more than just with that date, but that date's going to highlight it. It also has to do with the sort of marginalization of any opposition to Parminder's movement, right? Because that's, so you could say the real reason isn't really about November 22nd. It's about the fact that Tess and Parminder want to get rid of the opposition to their time setting. So we can look at all of this as the first angel's message, as an increase of light that that is going to be rejected by Parminder's movement, right? So they're going to reject that. Now we're going to have November 9th as, now if we're looking at Millerite history, November 9th is going to be tied with the first day of the first month, right? That's how we would tie it. So Soko and Azekah would be the two Passovers on either side of April 19th. That is the April 3rd Passover and the May 2nd Passover. That's part of that Levitical line. And so we can see that September 7th, when Jeff gets up at Lambert Church for the last time, the last sermon presented at Lambert Church, and speaks against Parminder's movement, that's connected with the second angel's message arriving. And so that period of time, that 126 days in there from September 7th, 2019 to January 11th, 2020 is connected, we can say, with Samuel Snow's letters, where he's going to have this proclamation of this message, which on July 18th then would be the parallel to the July 18th, July 21st, 1844 time period, those 3 days, right? And that's going to be David, where we have Goliath as being November 9th. So we don't have Soko and Azekah, those 2 dates, September 7th and January 11th, as waymarks, but they still exist as connected to the first day of the first month, to November 9th, just as we have the two Passovers connected to that. Hopefully that makes sense to people. So then July 18th is, so the second angel arriving on November 9th. Remember, that's going to be the two presentations that I give. So two presentations representing the second angel's message on the 273 and its connection to the Mayan calendar. So at November 9th, I'm at the School of the Prophets. I do these two presentations. They're connected to the Mayan calendar. I have not yet seen the line of failed predictions. That's not going to be until April of 2020 that I'm going to put all the dots together. And that's when Jeff is going to present about January 11th, 2020 and the Levitical chiasm. And then I see that as a model for this other chiasm, right? That's going to deal with the 777. So July 18th then is where that message is clearly going to be presented to the movement. Now, I'm going to do a presentation on the evening of July 17th in our Zoom studies, showing that July 18th is on a line of failed predictions. Okay, Angela asked a question. Did I say 11/9/19 is 2022 days after? No, January 21st, 2019 is 2,222 days after December 21st, 2012, just to clarify that, Angela. November 19th would be even more. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so I give these two presentations. I give one on the 17th and then another presentation on the 19th. So on either side of July 18th. So I explain on the 17th that July 18th is on this failed line. I'd done a presentation earlier but I do this again just before July 18th. One is I recognize that even though everything points to July 18th as a date, that we may be wrong as far as what we're predicting. And of course we were, right? July 19th, I explained clearly, again, why it never occurred and that we should just accept that it's on the line of failed predictions and that there's a reason for it, which we still have to flesh out. But part of it, as I suggest, is that the movement wasn't ready for what would have resulted if Nashville had a nuclear attack against it. Okay, now we can see that we got March 27th on this line. That Levitical chiasm gives us that 63 weeks to March 27th. Now, we can say, well, nothing happened on March 27th, 2021. So how could March 27th, 2021 be an empowerment of the second angel's message that arrived on November 9th, 2019, 504 days later? Any thoughts on that? Now, we know that March 27th, 2020 had started 100 days of prayer, but March 27th, 2021, as far as I know, we don't have any event on that date. So how can a date that has no events be a empowerment of the message? Maybe we would argue that December 25th, 2021, which does have significance, would be the empowerment. Any thoughts on that? And also March 27th being 1,533 days after January 14th, 2017. Any thoughts? Remember, I'm going to present the symbolism of 273 on November 9th, 2019. Could it be just the fact that nothing happened on March 27th, 2021 as evidence? Because we had it as a message going to the Levites, and we don't have a message going to the Levites on March 27th, 2021. Okay. Because I think it's when we get to March 27th, 2021, because we had the date of July 18th, and our prediction did not pan out. We also had March 27th, 2021 as a date on our line with no particular prediction attached to it, other than that we would have the message to the Levites prepared, and that would be, the midnight cry, something like that, maybe, or how that would be, I'm not sure. But it somehow was connected to July 18th, the proclamation of a message after the events of July 18th would have occurred. But nothing happens on March 27th, 2021. Now, 273 days later, so the symbol for the 27th of March, we're going to have 3 messages presented. What are those 3 messages that confirm that as the arrival of the third angel's message? And we're going to have that date marked by a symbol in chapter 17 of this Hebrew word, which is 2512. And 2512 is the word smooth, the 5 smooth stones. So we're going to say that those are represented by December 21st, 2021. So it has to do with the wise and the foolish. So there's a separation that occurs at this closed door. We say it's a closed door, right? Because it's the third angel arriving is a closed door. So what are the three messages that arrive on December 25th, 2021? There's really actually two that arrive on that date, but we have another one 49 days later. But they're still in connection with that. So we're going to have Odilio's, Collins, and Stephen's messages, light that comes in connection with that. So Stephen is going to notice the 777 years from 457 to 321 AD when the first Sunday law occurs. And we had December 25th, 2021 as a symbol of the Sunday law. We also have lots of December 25ths. We have Jehoiachin being released from prison by Evil-Merodach, right, in 561 BC, right, when he ascends to the throne after the death of Nebuchadnezzar, right? So Jehoiachin is going to be restored after 36 years in prison. He's going to be released. We have, of course, the baptism of Clovis, Charlemagne becoming the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire on December 25th, 800 AD. We have a bunch of them. So baptism of Clovis, of course, my baptism, 1982 on December 25th. So Stevens, we have Collins' prediction regarding Trump. Now there's, of course, it's not correct, but it is, right? So he has a chronology that tells us something that he's unwilling to acknowledge, which shows that his prediction is going to be false. And then Odilio, 49 days later, does a presentation dealing with the pandemic mandates, right? So we understand the symbolic nature of the pandemic. So all of this has been regarding time. And then we have this period of February 20th, 2025. Now that brings us into a repeat of history, which would be some other line. Okay, so Angela says something. She sees a parallel between Theodore Nahadi's banishment and David's banishment, and the cave of Adullam and the disaffected people who joined him. Right. So, yeah, okay. And of course, we didn't accept the decision, the declaration of FFA on December 6, 2020. Okay, so yeah, so in this period of time, so we have all of this that's happened when we get up to December 25th, 2021. And we could even include the message that I have maybe as the third instead of Odilio's if you wanted to. But the thing that I recognized is that a separation of the movement had occurred on December 25th, 2021. One is there was an invitation. So we can see that there's two groups being tested. The group under the first angel's message is the movement with the influence of Parminder, right? Then we have the people in the movement after November 9th, 2019 that are going to be tested, right? And that test ends with the closed door on December 25th, 2021. So November 9th, 2019 is a closed door, and December 25th, 2021 is a closed door. But then we have this February 2nd, 2025. Now, we're going to say that this is not the line of David and Goliath, but it is actually the arrival of the fourth angel. So it is kind of connected to the line, but we're not going to have February 20, 2025 as the closed door, the arrival of the third angel. We're going to have it as the fourth angel arrives. And we can see in our history that we have been approaching our study, especially since December 25th, 2021, in the context of understanding our failure and struggling with the separation that has happened in the movement, much as the Adventists did in Ellen White's group, James and Ellen White's group, as they struggled with what was happening, the light that they were receiving that was contrary to the larger body of Adventists. Now, so February 20th, we don't have like a particular event. I do in my personal line, right? But we have a symbol of restoration. And we will at some point go into the personal line once we some other things are cleared up, and then we can probably present that personal line and what it means symbolic. Some of us, I mean, most of you know what it is, but people watching it, but just don't want to make it public at this time. But in that personal line, there is some events that happen that are connected symbolically to this, the significance of this. So what we have to say is, at this time, there is a complete separation between the First-day Adventists and the Seventh-day Adventists, right? In Millerite history. So when does that occur in Millerite history? Roughly.
Well, after the after the Great Disappointment,
Okay, but it doesn't happen right away.
it probably happens in series.
Yeah, it happens in series. Now, we could say the ultimate place where it occurs would be 1863 when the Seventh-day Adventists organize, right? That would be the completion of that separation between Seventh-day Adventists and First-day Adventists, because they now have their own denomination. But it happens earlier in the 1850s.
Different disappointments, the three disappointments.
Yeah. So you know, in the 1840s, they're still part of the same movement. James and Ellen White are part of the Advent movement. They're still reading the papers of the different Advent groups. Some of the Adventists are looking at the material that James and Ellen White are presenting. When they publish the Review and Herald in the 1850s, they're doing that to reach Adventists, right? That's who initially they're wanting to reach. They're going to republish many of the pioneer writings, you know, William Miller's works and so forth, for Adventists, not Seventh-day Adventists, but Adventists, and present the new light that they have, the Sabbath and the sanctuary. Initially, that's the reason that they publish that, but it also is to go to non-Adventists. So they start to recognize that this shut door doctrine, as understood by many Adventists, is only really for Adventists, those that have the light. Those that didn't receive the light, the door has not been shut for them. So they see that there's this opportunity to give light to others, right? And they see God working and bringing people into the Advent movement, and which later becomes the Seventh-day Adventists. So can we see the parallel between our movement and what happened in Millerite history in connection with this line, but in regard to time setting? So this line is about time setting in the movement. Now, we have come to a solid conclusion about the fact that we can't time set. Now, we have struggled with it over the last few years in regard to future dates. Can we have future dates, and can we sort of predict these things, right? So And we would have lots of dates in the future. Colin had dates, and we looked at them, and we had things fulfilled in connection with the dates. Never the things that we were predicting, at least not in a direct way. But by implication, the fact that we put some of these dates in the future, they kind of become self-fulfilling prophecies in a sense. When you put a date and you know that nothing's going to happen on that date, but that will separate those groups of people, those that believe in the dates and those that don't, right? So we've come to a pretty solid conclusion about time setting. One is we can't do it. Now, there are still people time setting. Lots of people time setting in connection with 2025. And we can put 2025 on a line, right? Stephen has done a couple of lines that show that 2025 is significant. But we're not predicting an event. All we're recognizing is that what people are predicting is not being illustrated by 2025. So we have Josiah being connected to 2025, but it connects Josiah to Trump. And if Trump is being predicted by Josiah, then Trump is Josiah in that context, which is a good thing. It's part of the reform. And I've taken the position, whether everybody agrees with me or not, is that what Trump is doing is in connection with an opportunity given to the United States to reform. And you'll see, for instance, and Kelly pointed this out, but I've looked into it a bit more, the office of faith. You'll see lots of Facebook memes and videos and stuff where they make this huge deal about Trump setting up this office of faith and the lady that he put in charge of it and how it's all this evil thing. Did Trump set up the office of faith in the United States? No. So it wasn't set up by him at all, right? Something that was, I can't remember who set it up, but it's been around for a long, long time. And Trump is using the office of faith to promote religious liberty, nothing about religious oppression. Okay, so, and there's lots of misinformation regarding the person who is in charge of the office of faith, and lots of stuff that's not true. But people believe stuff. You don't have to, if you want people to believe things, you just keep telling them a lie long enough and they start believing it, especially if they're susceptible, ideologically to believe a lie, right? So people are believing that Trump has, some kind of plan to bring in a Sunday law, and he's going to use the office of faith to do that. And of course, we know that Ellen White says it's going to be from the people and it's going to be legislated. So obviously Trump can't sign an executive order to bring in the Sunday law. That wouldn't fulfill the Sunday law. But Trump also would have no interest in it. It would not be part of his plan. So we can see then that all of these different theories regarding time are not of God, right? That is, all of these where people are trying to predict what's going to happen. But it doesn't mean that time doesn't exist. Time does exist prophetically, often seen after the fact, or maybe as we approach a date like the year 2025, it can become clear to us what that year means. But we can't predict things like the Sunday law. We can't predict the close of probation. We can't predict the timing of the outpouring of the latter rain. Or of the loud cry, or of any promise of special significance. We can't know the time of Jesus' second coming. None of those things can be known to us. The second coming, we won't know its time until it's announced by the voice of God of when Christ is going to return. And every living saint will hear that time, and they will know when Jesus is coming. So they'll be prepared at that time. But we can't know the time of the second coming. And Ellen White's really clear about that, about the inability to predict those events. But watching and waiting, as we are to do, does mean we look at events as they unfold and we recognize this. So we can say by February 20th, 2025, that we are solidified in the fact that we understand the role of time setting in our lives. We recognize that there's a separation in the movement. And at this point, my view is that there's not anything we can do to restore that separation, that separation is complete. I could be wrong. I wish I was wrong, but doesn't mean individuals can't be restored. Friends of ours who've gone in a wrong direction, but it's going to be very difficult for individuals. But definitely as far as the movement organizing, again, like Together, Canadian American Group, FFA, we're like the Millerites or the Adventists after they separated from the Millerite movement. So in a sense, we have our roots in this movement, but we're not connected to it in any way any longer, like, no ties to it, right? Because they've rejected this message regarding July 18th, its significance. Okay, so I haven't tried to copy anything since I restarted this, I don't think. Okay, any comments on this? I've done a lot of talking here, more than I wanted to.
Just looking it over.
I'm gonna make these red. So we're going to say the first angel arrives here. It's formalized here. It's empowered here. Second angel arrives here. Okay. Which means we should have this illustrated, this history of 2020, that is February 20th, not 2020, 220, February 20th, 2025, that it's going to illustrate in their next line. So maybe the story of Jonathan and David, or Saul's jealousy, is going to be a line where February 20th, 2025 is part of that line. Okay, does that make sense to people? I need to straighten all this out. So we can say the period of darkness has to do with time setting. And Parminder has introduced that. It has to do with time. Now, he didn't completely introduce it in the sense that just make this font bigger. Because time had kind of come into the movement previously as far as time, but he's going to now use it to try to predict events, right? He's going to say we can have a Sunday law in 2014. And he's going to expand on that as time goes on, no pun intended, with the fact that he's in 2017, he's going to say, I was correct about time back in 2012, even though it was condemned by Jeff as fanaticism. He's going to argue that he was correct, just that he had the wrong event, right? And so he's going to prepare the way for them actually setting the date November 9th, 2019. Right. Now that's going to be a close of probation for that group. But still, the people who are in the movement are going to be tested with July 18th, because there's more to be understood, not just that time setting is wrong, but why we time set in the first place, what's behind it as far as our character defects. That we want a shortcut, right? We don't want to be corrected by God. We want to win the spiritual lottery. So the third angel arriving December 25th, 2021 makes sense in that context because what's attached with it. And definitely the separation of the movement from my work on chronology and the things that our group is saying. Now, of course, we're going to have an expansion of that, because even though that probation closes, let's say, on December 25th, 2021, there's still going to be more messages given, just as the Seventh-day Adventists gave messages to the Millerites, but those are ultimately going to be rejected.
Brother Theodore,
Yeah,
so you're saying the darkness is the time set before December the 21st, right?
the what?
Darkness, you're saying darkness was before 20?
Yeah, so the darkness before December 21st, 2012 is Parminder's time setting.
Right, that's time set. All right, I was just checking.
So the idea that we can time set, Parminder is going to introduce that in 2012. And the messages that are being given to me in regarding chronology and connected with that date, right? Because it's going to be my study of the 2520. Now, the thing that happens with that, with meeting Heidi, because eventually 108 days later we get married, that's actually what gives me the time to really study. So I've been doing lots of studying from 2010 onward. But when I marry Heidi in 2012, I go from working 75 hours a week to 15 hours a week. So that gives me an extra, 60 hours a week to study chronology. It actually gives me more of that. Sometimes I'm studying 80 hours a week, sometimes 100 hours a week, right? So back then I had lots of time to study. So that's what I was doing, intensive study. So in 2014, I'm going to present chronology to the movement. And Jeff is going to invite me to the School of Prophets to present on chronology. And so that becomes important. Like, it's not on this line particularly, but it is symbolized. That would be part of the increase of light, that we would have, is the increase of light on chronology that comes. Now, when we get to January 14th, 2017, I'm not going to present at that retreat at all. Jeff is just going to be presenting. It's just a weekend, right? And he's going to present Raphia and Panium, particularly Panium, in the sense that's the first time he presents that. So he had presented Raphia earlier in the week at the School of the Prophets, but he hadn't presented Panium yet. And I'm not sure how much of Panium was Jeff's own idea and how much was someone else's idea. I don't know. But that's what he's going to focus on. That's really what he becomes interested in. Raphia, of course, as well, but the Panium part. And he makes this pandemic prediction. So that obviously becomes fulfilled. So we have predictions that are being fulfilled. So a person could say, well, we have time setting, it's correct. But all of these are to undermine the time setting of Parminder, the basis of his time setting, the purposes of time setting. So when we look in more detail at Daniel or 1 Samuel chapter 18, when we're going to start looking at David and Jonathan and the roles that they play, I think that that's going to be a zoom into February 20th, 2025. And then we have to figure out, what that line is. But I think it would just address more the separation that happened in the movement after December 25th, 2021. So my view is that we're going to have a line where December 25th, 2021 is the arrival of the first angel. That is, in that line, which is a zoom into February 20th, 2025, the time of the end is the end of the 777 days. Does that make sense? Or even actually the end of the 777 day chiasm, which goes from December 21st, 2012 to December 25th, 2021. Right. So we already had those lines when we studied Judges, right? But we never had February 20th, 2025. That's a new date. But it represents some change in the movement, in our understanding, our relationship to the movement, and our understanding of our disappointment. And so I would assume that on this line that we're going to be looking at in chapter 18 is that we're going to be looking more at what had happened with the camp meetings, the study of Judges, Jeff coming in and beginning to write and then to speak, right? So Jeff is doing, I guess every Sabbath he's doing a study pretty much, right? Is that correct? Seems like that's the case. And yet the stuff that he's doing is counter to what he presented in the past. And does that happen in Millerite history? Do we reject past light in order to move on to new light? Is new light a rejection of past light?
No, of course not. It's built on the past light. But I was going to ask you for July 1820 there you have 2 AE and for March 27, 21 you have 2F. Shouldn't it be
Yeah, I got
2F
them
and
mixed.
then 2?
Yeah, I just moved the wrong ones.
I was just curious.
It's just quickly moving those things and not really looking at them. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, there we go. Second angel is empowered on March 21st, 2021. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so we should be able to see this as we go through chapter 18. I thought it would be good I didn't know it'd take that long to finish off chapter 17, this line. But that's what I believe that we will see. Now, we also know that February 20th as a symbol of 220, which is a symbol of restoration, that there's as David, that is Christ, connected to July 18th, takes over the leadership of this movement, then we should see some kind of restoration in connection with that. So it's the restoration of the kingdom, but under a new leader, which is Christ. That's what I'm suggesting at this point without going through all the details yet. But when we go through the rest of the story of the end of Saul and the rise of King David to become king, in actuality, he's been anointed once. Then we would have to, and so we're going to see in this line when we go to this Yeah, anyway, we don't have time to go over that. So we will go over it. So when we get to chapter 18, we'll see how we would create this line. Okay. Any final thoughts before we close with prayer? I know it's a lot to think about. And of course, we don't have a study tomorrow morning, so we come back to this on Sunday. And today is March 27th, by the way.
Right. Now, one question.
Yeah.
How can the second angel's arrival come before the first angel's arrival?
That's a different line. Right?
Okay.
So remember, so we have Jeff's line where we have the time of the ends, 1989, 9/11 is the arrival of the second angel. All of what's happening to us right now is part of 9/11. We're still in the arrival of the second angel. So
Okay.
this line is encompassed in 9/11. We haven't got to midnight yet on
Right.
that line, right? So the second angel has not yet been formalized until we get to midnight, whenever that is. But we're not there yet. So yeah, that's why I wanted these to be in red and not in black, so you can see that they're not the same line.
Okay.
Okay, but good question, helps clarify that. Okay, well, thanks. So let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for the time that we've had to study, talk together. We know, Lord, that there's still much we do not understand and many things that we probably believe that need to be corrected, that will help us see things more clearly, sort of a spiritual astigmatism that we sometimes have. But we just ask, Lord, that you can help us to see things clearly, especially in regard to our own sins as we reflect upon your character. We ask, Lord, that you can transform us to make us to be like Jesus, and that we can reflect that character to others. We pray for each person, that your angels can watch over them, and that your Holy Spirit can rest upon them and speak to them and through them. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.